Hey guys, it's Rogaway here, and today we are looking at the first of a series of videos for learning Unity. A little bit of a background around Unity itself. It is a um, game development software. It uses C Sharp, which is a programming language that you may or may not already be familiar with. And today we're going to just go through the basics of the program itself, and hopefully through this series we'll gradually build upon what we've learned in previous videos, and by the end hopefully you'll have at least an intermediate sort of understanding of how Unity works. You'll notice two things that I have on my screen right now. I have the Unity Hub, which is Unity's sort of launcher for the projects that we've built. I've also got Visual Studio 2022, which comes included with Unity when you install it. If you're using the Adobe suite, you may notice that Dreamweaver will try to take over, and I'm going to show you how to change that. Again, it's a personal preference here. You can pick whatever one you want. I prefer Visual Studio, but again, it's up to you. In the hub itself, you will need to be signed in. So you will need to be signed into your account, and it's free. You don't have to pay anything if you're doing this educationally. You're also going to have to install a version of Unity. I am using 2022. All right. If you're using an older version, most of this is still going to work. If you're using a newer version, hopefully it'll still work. I will repost a video if anything changes drastically. But you've got official and pre-releases. You also got access to beta releases as well. There is a learn section, but again, hopefully if you're following this video, you're going to be learning the stuff you need without following that. But again, it's up to you. Maybe that's the way you'd prefer to learn. That's an option as well. Anyways, what I'm going to do is I am going to go to projects and I'm going to create a new project. And basically, when Unity starts a new project, it's going to ask you what type of project is this going to be. You see all sorts of different options. Some of them have entire sort of built scenes and assets and stuff that you can use. They're called learning. All right. You've got 2D and 3D though, and you got a few different versions of 3D. You've also got VR. So depending on the project that you're building, you can choose whichever one interests you. This particular playlist of videos is going to be specifically for 3D. On the right-hand side, we're going to name our project, and I'm going to call this project Unity Basics. And I'm going to choose right here where to save my project. Now, it's very important that the place that you choose stays the same and it stays consistent, because Unity will save all of its assets and all of its stuff to that location. All of its scripts, everything that it uses will be in that location. I'm going to show you more of the file structure after we get through this. So we're going to click location. I'm going to choose my desktop. Actually, let's just go back this way to my desktop, and I've got a folder called Unity Projects. It's got some basic stuff that I did for this playlist, and I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this Unity Basics. Okay, and actually, you know what? I don't even have to do that. As long as I've got a Unity Projects folder, it's going to make that folder inside here for me. So I'm just going to hit select folder on the Unity Projects folder, hit select, and create. And it'll do its thing. Oh, I forgot to mention that you can also pick the version number that you want to use. Now you notice this is going in 2020. I want to switch it to 2022. I'm going to use the latest version for this tutorial. So once this opens up, I'm actually going to close it, and I'm going to switch the editor version to 2022. Okay, so it'll take a couple minutes to open up and to get everything set up for our project. And there it is. There it is. I'm going to just close it because, again, like I said, I want to change the version number. So I'm going to close that. We're going to go into Unity editor version, and I'm going to switch to 2022, which is the latest version as of right now, the latest stable version. And we're going to open it. And it'll ask if you want to change version. I'm going to change the version, and it should launch in 2022, which looks a lot different. This tells you it's in the latest version. Again, if you are on a newer version, this screen will probably look different again. But we are now going into the correct version. I'll wait for that to load. It's going to look exactly the same. All right, aside from a few updates, it's going to look exact. And you'll notice a couple of things here that we are looking at, and I'm going to try to explain this in sort of simple terms. Basically, Unity is split into four panels. You can change the layout to something else if you'd like, but you've got a hierarchy here, which is all the items in your scene right now. This is your scene itself, so this is where you're building your project. This is the inspector window over here that allows you to change all the properties of the objects that you're working on. And down here is your assets. This is actually linked to the folder inside your project that you just created. There will be a folder called assets, and everything that you create here will also be inside that folder on your computer. So that's the basic layout of Unity, and I just want to go and jump over to my desktop just to show you how the folder looks that it creates. So inside here we have a folder called Unity Basics, that's what I called it. And this is the folder structure that it creates. The only thing that you're going to even look at possibly right now, you're probably not going to be changing much in here, but inside assets, that is, like I said, it is linked to where the objects and the assets that you're putting into your game will be coming from. Again, it's very important that you don't delete this folder on your desktop, because Unity will be linking to everything in that folder, especially the assets folder, but it will be linking to all these files that it needs to create this file. Okay, so do not delete it. All right, back to Unity. Now, Unity by default will use Visual Studio as its editor for the coding that we're going to be doing. And one thing you want to change before you go any further, again, you can decide on what coding program you prefer, but I would go under edit. No, sorry, under Unity settings. There it is. Unity settings, sorry. And this will open up the preferences. And along the left-hand side, you're going to look for external tools. And external tools, the very first thing will be your script editor. And from this list, you can choose the program that you wish. By default, Visual Studio will be in the list if you've installed it with Unity. If you would rather use something like Dreamweaver, you can just browse for it. You can choose it. If Dreamweaver is taking over by default, that means that you have Adobe installed, and it's probably the default program for coding. So you can come in here and you can change it to Visual Studio if you'd rather use that instead. I'm not going to get into too much of the other, there's a lot of settings in here. I'm not going to get into too much of the other ones. You could go into colors and totally change the look of your program if you really want to, but I leave it as default. It works just fine. All right, and I'm going to close that up. All right. So next, let's take a quick little look at the stage, because everything that we're going to be doing more or less is going to happen on the stage and also in the coding language of our choice, or the coding program of our choice. So as you can tell right now, you can see a little camera and a sun. And so the camera and the sun are the two objects that we see here. Main camera, and if we click it, we get a view of what that camera sees. And directional light, which is the light in our scene right now. All right, so I'll explain more about this one after. But for now, let's just look at how we can sort of explore the stage. Using the scrolly wheel on the middle of your mouse, you can zoom in and zoom out. All right. And if you hold the middle scrolly wheel, you can pan around your scene. If you click the right button, you can look around or orbit around your scene. All right. These are very similar to other programs. So if you're familiar with Blender or other 3D type softwares, these are pretty similar. You get used to it pretty quick. All right. So that's about it. Left click will select the objects in your scene. All right, that's important. You'll also notice along this side here, we've got some tools. All right, and these tools are super, super useful. So the hand tool will allow us to pan the scene. By default, if you hold the middle scroll wheel, it will do that anyways. This is the move tool, so we can click an object and we can move it along different axes. We can also grab it and move it as well. Sort of a less precise way of doing it. We can also punch in its position here too if we want. All right, and you'll notice as I'm selecting objects, as I'm clicking objects, everything over here in the inspector panel is changing completely. All right, and it's based on the object that we have selected. So in this case, again, we've got a couple more options. We've got rotate, and rotate will allow us to change the rotation of the object that we're selecting. I'm going to just undo that because I want it to keep it perfectly straight. Scale tool doesn't make too much sense with the camera because the camera is going to stay sort of the same as it would be normally. But if you had an object in here and you need to change its scale, there it is. Free transform allows you to actually adjust the size sort of freely. They call it the rectangle tool, but it's like free transform in other programs. And the last one is sort of a multi-directional transform tool that has the move axes and the rotation orbits there. Everything is in that one tool. So if you want to use just one tool, transform tool is pretty excellent for that. All right, you will notice also along the top we have a tab that says game. And what game does is if we switch to game, we can get a preview of what we see as sort of our game view right now. All right, and all it is a view from inside of this camera. You'll notice that that also comes up here when we have the camera selected. It's just a way of positioning our camera so that we know where it's going to start when the game begins. All right, so those are the basics of sort of navigating in Unity. If you're just starting out, we're going to get into some more complex stuff in the next video, so stay tuned.